The Presidential Gallery gives visitors the opportunity to view an historic collection of presidential aircraft, including aircraft used by Presidents Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, as well as the Boeing VC-137C, also known as SAM 26000, which was used by 8 presidents: Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, George H.W. Bush and Clinton. The Douglas VC-54C Skymaster is the first purpose-built aircraft to fly the President of the United States, President Roosevelt. Its official name was the Flying White House, but it was better known by its unofficial nickname, Sacred Cow. One extraordinary feature was installed: a battery-powered elevator which allowed President Roosevelt to board the aircraft easily while in his wheelchair. This Douglas VC-118 was the second aircraft built specifically to transport the President of the United States. A military version of the commercial Douglas DC-6 airliner, it was used by President Harry S. Truman from 1947 to 1953. At the suggestion of the aircraft's pilot, President Truman named it the Independence in recognition of his hometown, Independence, Missouri. This is the only Lockheed VC-121E built, and it served as President Dwight D. Eisenhower's personal airplane from 1954 until he left office in January 1961. A military version of the famous commercial Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation, it has a fuselage stretched 18 feet longer than earlier versions. Eisenhower named this aircraft, his third Constellation, Columbine III, after the official state flower of Colorado in honor of his wife Mamie. This Aero Commander U-4B, a U.S. Air Force version of the Aero Commander L-26, was used by President Dwight D. Eisenhower from 1956 to 1960 for short trips. A pilot himself, President Eisenhower would often take the controls, primarily during trips between Washington, D.C. and his farm in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The first presidential aircraft to have only 2 engines, the U-4B was also the first presidential aircraft to carry the familiar blue and white paint scheme. Bell's UH-13J was the U.S. Air Force's version of the reliable Bell Model 47J Ranger helicopter. 2 UH-13Js were purchased in March 1957 for use as the first presidential helicopters. On July 12, 1957, President Dwight D. Eisenhower became the first chief executive to fly in a helicopter when he lifted off from the White House lawn in the sister ship of the Sioux on display. In 1961, the U.S. Air Force acquired 6 Lockheed VC-140B jet stars to transport the President of the United States, high-ranking government officials and other heads of state. It is the military version of the famous Lockheed Model 1329 business jet. It provided fast and economical travel for several U.S. presidents, having flown Presidents Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan a number of times. This Boeing VC-137C was the first jet aircraft built specifically for use by the President of the United States. During its 36-year flying career, it carried 8 sitting presidents and countless heads of state, diplomats, dignitaries and officials on many historic journeys known as special air missions. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated while traveling in a motorcade through downtown Dallas, Texas. Hours later, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the new president aboard this aircraft that then carried Kennedy's body and President Johnson back to Washington, D.C. In 1966, the U.S. Air Force purchased a standard Beechcraft King Air B-90 with a special VIP interior, designated as the VC-6A, to support President Lyndon B. Johnson and his family. It was primarily used to transport President Johnson and his family between Bergstrom Air Force Base, Texas and the Johnson Ranch near Stonewall, Texas. Owing to these frequent flights, the aircraft became informally known as the Lady Bird Special, a play on the nickname of First Lady Claudia Johnson. From August 1968 until early 1973, this T-39A Sabreliner was assigned to Bergstrom Air Force Base in support of former President Lyndon Johnson as he traveled to and from his ranch in nearby Stonewall. Originally designed for a crew of 2 with 4 passengers, this T-39A was retrofitted with a special VIP interior to accommodate 6 passengers and 3 crew members. Gulfstream Aerospace's C-20B provided executive airlift to thousands of senior American leaders for more than 2 decades. During its long service, this aircraft carried former Presidents James E. Carter, Gerald R. Ford, George H. W. Bush and William J. Clinton. I hope you enjoyed this virtual tour of the Air Force Museum's Presidential Gallery. If you would like to tour other galleries in this series, convenient links are listed in the description section below this video.